Hello again. I've found in many instances in society, in life in general, not enough people ask each other how they feel. And it's a real big thing. No one in my life when I was growing up ever asked me how I felt. Um, it was assumed, there's just an assumption. So, one of the most powerful things you can say to a child is, how would you feel about going to piano lessons or football skills practice or whatever it is? Because they might not want to go. You might want them to go, but they might not want to go. And no one seems to ask people, or it's a very rare thing. I've found with a lot of clients, I sometimes say, they'll announce something, they'll say, oh, I'm getting divorced next week. And no one ever says to them, how do you feel about that? And it's such an important thing because it's an important thing for a counsellor to ask someone or anyone in that kind of work, because they might feel great about getting divorced or they might feel devastated and bereft. So we can't assume how someone feels. Obviously, there are times not to mention the phrase "How do you feel?" You know, if someone announces that the house has just burnt down and they've lost all their possessions, you wouldn't say, "How do you feel about that?" Or you probably you'd be unlikely to say that because the person could come back at you and say, "I feel fucking great. How would you feel?" So when it's a really obvious thing like my house has burnt down, I've lost all my possessions, and I wasn't insured, you're not really going to ask how someone feels about that. But say a parent of theirs had died, say their own father had died, um, they might come in and say to you, oh, my dad died last week. And it's a good time to say, how do you feel about that? Because they might not have liked their parent. They might have had an adversarial relationship with them like I did. So my dad died a few years ago, and that left me with mixed feelings, and then lots of other stuff that's not for this video. But so the feelings weren't ones of sorrow and despair, like you might imagine. Most people whose fathers die have feelings of sadness and guilt or anger or frustration in some ways, but that's how they feel. But just because most people who lose a parent feel devastated, that doesn't mean to say I will or you will. So it's a very important process comment. How do you feel about that? What does it feel like? And of course, children growing up are never asked that question. I don't think I was ever asked once in my early life how I felt about it. How do you feel about it? Anthony, you've got to go to choir practice at church on Friday night. Oh, right, okay. So I just went. I didn't want to go. I didn't want to carry on having piano lessons, but no one said, how do you feel about it? So if I'd have been asked that, how do you feel about going to choir practice? Actually, choir practice was okay, so I'd have said, yeah, I feel okay about that. How do you feel about going to piano lessons? Maybe not, maybe, maybe not. Maybe I wouldn't have gone to that. How do you feel about going to karate lessons? Might be useful to me, if someone bullies me for wearing a strange hat one day. But you see, people aren't asked that question enough, I don't think. So how do you feel about it? What are your feelings in relation to COVID-19 or anything like that? One should be asked about. their feelings and what it's like for them. I'm wondering now if it's part of the British psyche not to ask about that. So I've got a lot of viewers on this channel. I think I've got about 24 subscribers at the moment, so I'm flying high. So if any one of those subscribers is an American, maybe the Americans do it differently. Maybe the Americans are always asking each other how they feel, and maybe it's a different thing. Maybe it's a cultural thing. But I've never known anyone in Britain ask anybody how they felt about something. Maybe it's an assumed thing because, so for example, Brits talk a lot about the weather because it's changing all the time. We only have about 2 days of summer, and on those days everyone gets sunburnt because they can't believe it, so they run out quickly, and get skin cancer or something. So, yeah, it's a funny thing. How do you feel about it? So no one ever asks how you feel about the weather because it would be inviting too much negativity. You don't want to be asked about the weather. It'd just be too much. Be too much pain involved in the reply. So maybe that's it. So yeah, if I have any American friends across the water who'd like to say, oh yeah, in America we ask ourselves all the time. In California, one imagines California to be a liberal, touchy-feely land of the free, with everyone riding around on Segways in Jane Fonda leg warmers. Do Americans ask each other how they feel all the time? How do you feel about that? Well, I feel dreadful. But how do you really feel? I feel terrible. So it's very important that how do you feel about that? So someone comes in, oh, I've just lost my job. Oh, my cat's just been run over by the neighbour. How do you feel about it? Well, I didn't like it anyway because it was always being sick on the carpet. The cat, not the neighbour. So yeah, that's my little... Well, I was going to say it's a rant for the day, but these aren't rants. I think the word rant came from people like Bill Hicks and the other great American comedians, whereby when they'd go into like a monologue, it was called a rant. In fact, Bill Hicks had a famous rant called Rant in E Minor, I think it was called. And they were rants because he was ranting and raving. He was going mad about this, about society at the time, about George Bush Senior in Bill Hicks's day. So that was a rant. One rants about the way society's going. One rants about scrotism or things like that. But this isn't a rant. This is a conversation with myself and my many viewers. So people said, "Oh yeah, I've seen your rant on YouTube." No, you haven't. You've seen a monologue from Anthony. This isn't a rant. I can rant, but this isn't it. In fact, I might start doing that. I might start ranting on feelings. Bye for now.